Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, gang, depending upon which part of the world you are logging in from today. Welcome to Forward Focus. So we are going to take a look at what is currently going on in the market and what we will be looking for as we head into the week ahead. So let's flip on over here to our charts. I should have my little guy in here with us right now. He is home on spring break. How many of you guys have spring break right now? I know a lot of you don't have little ones anymore. A lot of big kiddos and grandkids out there now. Nobody's on spring break? Come on, man. That's no fun. How many of you just decided to take your own spring break? You got your own spring break? Awesome. All right, everyone see my charts okay? Perfect. Okay, so we've had a pretty exciting morning so far today, haven't we? Right? So I'm going to start by actually taking a look at what we've got going on last night. Because heading into the end of the day, those of you that are following along in the League of Trader alerts, we had a lovely little 2T forming at the very end of yesterday's session. And it's actually the cleanest when we go and pull it up on the Dow. By the way, here's a good level of support here with some measured move action. I'm going to go pull up our Dow quick and show you what we were looking at the end of the day yesterday. I'm going to put it on this one. Maybe. My computer hasn't liked pulling up the euro dollar futures here. Let's see. I'm going to go get that Dow. Come on, you. Maybe not. It's going to be tricky on me again. Okay, well, that's fine. We'll go look at it on TradeStation. I know. It is just not liking me. All right. That's okay. We got a backup here. All right. So, end of the day yesterday. Here is what we had developing. We had this large, rather large 2T on the 5-minute. Drop down to a 5-minute here. So it was about as textbook classic as you get with our nice move up, our correction, pull into a high that's just shy of the previous high. And then here was the short. So this was the alert in our League of Traders alert platform for the short. And then here was the first initial support level. And then we had a little avalanche going into the end of the day. I know not everyone loves holding overnight, especially into the close. I did on this one because of the larger time frame resistance. And we were rewarded with a nice two-wave continuation. So what usually happens here, this is a whole series of events where we get this one pattern where you can ultimately predict the next number of patterns that will come after it. Because when you get a 2T, a lot of times the next pattern that comes is either going to be a 1, 2, 3, where it will go faster like this. Let me clear that. I'll just show you the whole thing here. It'll either be a 1, 2, 3 like that, or it'll be an avalanche slash, sometimes it can go for another little smaller 2T, but it'll basically be another shifted channel like that, and then break down. And when you get the avalanche as the one that follows, then coming out of the avalanche, we get the 1, 2, 3. How many of you guys remember this from our League of Trader live sessions? There was a point like a couple of months ago where I swear every single session of the day we talked about this follow through. You get the 2T into the avalanche, into the 1, 2, 3, and then things widen up. So this led to our bounce. We held that measured move perfectly. Nice, picture perfect 2-wave move up. Gave the short, 2-wave move down, and then here's that next do or die point. And what we saw happening here is that on the larger time frame charts, momentum was still really strong on the downside, and we struggled to get a good reaction off of that next do or die point. So it ended up creating a continuation on a breakdown. DIA is the Dow, yes. So it's the tracking stock for the Dow. It's like your ETF. You've got the spider SPY for the S&P 500 and the Qs, QQQ for the NASDAQ. So a lot of traders, especially when they're switching from going into stocks into futures, or if they just want to keep their risk really low and trade futures, this is how I introduce them to it. If they can day trade on a stock account, then what you can do is you can position your share size so that you can take much smaller losses, have much smaller gains, but you use your futures account as your triggers. So for example, if you get a short on the YM, you actually short the DIA. But you do it with small size, so like 20 shares or something like that. And it gets you the feeling of being able to trade the futures market without taking as big of size risk as you do when you trade futures. So for example, you know, a single stop on the S&P, you could have hundreds of dollars in losses, but if you take it on the SPY, same position, you could set your stop to like $20, $30, something like that, just as you get familiar with the waves of movement. So that can be one of the advantages. Also, another advantage is if you do trade overnight and you don't want to get whipped around in overnight trades, then using the Qs or diamonds or spiders is another way that you can do it. So right now we are looking at measured move levels on, oh, now my diamonds come up. That was nice of you. We're looking at measured move zones on this smaller zone here. So this was that second point here, where if this was going to hold into a range, hold into a zone, you had the 2 waves up, 2 waves back down. But what happened was it couldn't get off the move there. And it actually had a shifted move right here. So this ended up being basically a tilted continuation. So this whole pattern that formed here, I'm going to actually go down to a smaller time frame chart. You guys were asking me to detail this, so that's why we're going into this in a little bit more detail. When we go down to the smaller time frame chart, here's the 1,000 tick. So here's the 2 wave down. Here was the 2 wave up. This was that first main bigger measured move support. And here was where, if it was going to bounce, it should have bounced here. Now you can get these little blurps. That's totally normal. But after it does the 3 lows, it should have picked up momentum here. And here's where things went awry for a bounce. So what you'll notice is that at this point, I'm going to clear this, it had the nice strong move up off of the 3rd low. Great. But then it went all the way back and retested that low. What that meant was that when this did a second move up, You now have that two-wave count on a smaller time frame, and it shifts the entire momentum here. So what we needed to see to get a bigger bounce was on this correction right here, it should have held the upper 50%. So this is a 1,000 tick chart, but if it had held that upper 50%, then it could have done that bigger two-wave, continue to shift momentum with where you could get like a larger phoenix and go like that. So this is basically where things flipped on you. Now there was a little bit of an issue right in here too, because with your best momentum reversals, what do you want to see off of the low? Who remembers this? V pivots, exactly. And what happened right here? No V, right. So your best thing to have gotten that bigger bounce here is that it would have reacted better here. So these little tiny changes are what really impacted this move. And then when it comes down here, that next pattern, when you get a momentum reversal, is the momentum reversal plus. You get your 1, your 2, and your 3, can bounce up twice, come back down, slightly lower low. So this becomes that last final do or die zone. Things are always already not looking so hot, but that last attempt right there, that sealed the deal. So a short on this actually takes place here when this breaks down. Now let me go and show you that momentum reversal plus template, because this happens over and over, guys, to the extent that we even have a template right here. So that's that do or die point where if it's going to do the momentum reversal plus, it has to go right there. Basically, it's a slightly higher high. So if we take that and we look at what happened on the futures here, and we look at that point right under here, you are lining up this move to this move. This two-wave move up here is the two-wave correction here. So that's that point that you now have another do or die point. A lot of people are asking me, what are the do or die points? Well, here's one lesson on where one of them is. So that gives way, breaks that channel there. Basically, here's your, you can see 2 waves or 3 waves in here, but I count it as 2. So I count 1, 2-wave correction, 2. So that's like this up, 2-wave correction, 2. So kind of use that little middle zone as a your little corrective move. And then this becomes that point right here. Those of you that were in Mentor Monday this week, we talked about this in great detail. So you will recall how we look at 2 waves versus 3 waves. All right, so that fails, that triggers the breakdown. And then what we have instead is this entire move here becomes essentially a 2-wave correction. So in other circumstances, this will look like this. So instead of tilting to the downside like it does here, it'll actually tilt a little bit to the upside, and then you'll get this bigger 2-wave continuation. So it's a version of that exact same pattern. It's just tilted to the downside instead. And it was just those little teeny tiny giveaways that say, hey, you know what? Things aren't really looking quite right like they should. And then this sealed the deal right here. So then that becomes a short. And I was talking to Harvey last night, and we decided we're going to call this a wipeout because what happens is that you get your first main move down, and then you've got like that back and forth. Is it going to go with a momentum reversal or momentum reversal plus, or is it going to shift and go lower? And what can happen with traders is they will move their stop slightly lower and slightly lower, giving it just a little bit more room, sometimes even adding into positions as it's moving against, because they're like, oh, well, the momentum's shifting. It really has to turn around. And before you know it, you've given back your entire day's gains, your entire week's gains. And in some situations, if you went and added on, you might even give back your entire month's worth of gains on something like that. So this was like one of the hardest things when I was learning to trade, to deal with this specific type of development in the market. So what we've got right now is we are at a measure move zone on the continuation. So here's your first wave, here's your 100%, and then we are getting these three lows kind of pushing and shifting the momentum. So this is where we expect things to widen up again. So on the larger time frame charts, I'm going to go back here and show you what's going on the time frame charts, because this is really important. Look at that momentum here. We've got really strong momentum without any sort of shift in momentum at this low yet. So it's basically the equivalent of these type of moves, where it's the really rapid move. Notice the size is about the same as a lot of these previous size moves when you get that same momentum going. And in some cases, it pushes past this. So you actually get continuations that go even further. But that main portion of the impulse move is about the same size. And so that tells me, hey, this is a zone where things are going to start to try to widen up, because we are at that level where it is the same size. So it can widen up here. It can continue lower. It can continue lower with slower momentum. It can continue lower with faster momentum. It can even shift this way, give us like a 2T or something, and then break lower again. But it is a good zone that you will start to see a lot more back and forth action. So the trend, when it continues, it tends to chop around more. So you'll get these little bursts of momentum, but the overall trend will tend to shift as far as the momentum goes. So that's what we're looking at as we head into this afternoon and then into next week as well. Let's go take a look at some of the other markets here, see what we've got going on in Forex. Look at some of the bigger time frames here. So this is our breakdown on the dollar yen, coming off of a little bit of an avalanche here on the daily chart, on the 240-minute chart. This kind of gets off to a little bit of a slow start. So we've got basically a shallow avalanche that formed, little head and shoulders in here. And we are on wave 2 on this one as well, on the 240-minute. So this again is a good zone where things should widen up a little bit on this daily time frame here as we come into here. So we should see some more back and forth action on the dollar yen at this point. For those that caught that avalanche, this is also a zone where I would always look to protect some of the position as well. Now we can get things where it'll do basically like what happened on the NASDAQ this morning. It can give you a 2-way bounce and then come back down. Or basically the overall market did that this morning. So that would be a typical reaction at this point. That would be really, really common here. With the dollar Swiss, we're also coming off of the high, but as you guys know on the dollar Swiss, this is something where the weekly range is just kind of a lot messier. Put that up here. And it's just kind of all over the place, back and forth, back and forth. There's not a predominant bias on this at the moment. On the intraday charts, we do have, again, that measured move. So this did that same wipeout type of thing here. Kind of the slower start, measured move. And so see how this bounces here? That's what we're talking about on what happened here this morning as well. So you get the measured move, then you get the two-wave bounce, and then this is that wipeout kind of type of pattern where it's a tilted continuation. And you can even see in here, it kind of struggles to get off of the lows. The momentum just kind of, even though the overall channel is shifting, the smaller channel momentum is still more gradual on the upside. And sometimes it'll be stronger to start with and then shift and be more gradual, like what we saw happening today in the indices. But whenever it does that, that's a heads up that this can break. And if that lower channel breaks, the next target zone isn't until it hits a measured move like this, there to there. That becomes that next target zone. And that's what we're seeing react here, basically off of yesterday's lows or the day before. So on the daily chart, this is a widening up zone. There's still room for this to go lower, but we are at a typical impulse size move here. So you can see some of them will go a little bit bigger. So it's not a full bigger impulse move, but it is one of the shorter ones. And so here's one way that the continuation can happen and just shift momentum. So that's a possibility at this point here. Basically getting more of the back and forth intraday action at this moment, and then we'll see how that plays out. Like if it bases here straight out, that can even do a 1, 2, 3. It could do the shallow kind of not a shallow avalanche, but a little bit of a longer one like this did, and then have the slower follow through. The weekly is really just kind of up in the air. It can do anything, so it's not, doesn't have a primary bias on that one. Dollar loonies. So this was coming into that support last week we were looking at right here, where we had the inverse head and shoulders. Again, that measured impulse wave on the upside, give us the resistance, pulled down, a little bit of an avalanche. Here's the 1, 2, 3, and see how this one widened up. This one widened up basically going into a trading range. So this 1, 2, 3 is what we're seeing here on the dollar yen on the 240 minute on a much bigger scale. And it's also the same type of action we're seeing here in the futures market as well. And so this is one way that that widening up can happen. And right here, I don't really see anything I would do too much with at this point. The break on this was a little bit trickier, didn't have like a clear, slower pattern to trigger this. See weekly charts here. Weekly on this is kind of looking like we got room for another secondary wave up. Kind of try like another wave. It could do it with a shifted momentum. This zone of highs is going to be a major resistance zone to contend with once it gets up into there. But intraday things are a lot choppier, so it wasn't as clear cut for the continuation. You can see here, basically what ended up happening is if we do our wave count, you got your two waves up. And then it tries to do a head and shoulders kind of double top type of thing here. And then you got momentum shifting with the channel here. And that kind of is what shifted the momentum. A lot of times this will go like this though. It'll have like two waves like that. And that is much clearer. That's a lot easier when you have it like this, because then you clearly see, hey, it has two waves up. Momentum goes like that after coming down like this, and then it shifts. And then it's really clearly a buy setup. We didn't quite have that happening here though. It was a little bit messier, not as clear cut. The crone just coming off two-wave measured move off of lows, little tiny 1, 2, 3. This is also at a widening up zone. Don't see anything too interesting on this. I don't think I know of any of you guys that actually trade this either. We don't usually cover that one. Norwegian. Every once in a while, you'll get really nice setups on this. Euro dollar, it's basically our opposite of our krone here, and it's really messy as well. So we've got this coming up into the resistance zone from the larger channel. And this is when we're also on the weekly. It's a wipeout type of pattern. So you got your first main move down, and then we've got momentum shifting. 3 lows, shifting higher, shifting lower. It can't really decide what it wants to do here. So it's a much trickier market again. And this is one, again, if you keep trying and trying and trying, you can wipe out your account pretty easily. So drop down to smaller time frames on these. Just focus on those smaller time frames at the moment for setups. I don't really see anything that's developing at this exact moment because we've got the 2 waves down, again, opposite of our krone. And so we're at a widening up zone. It's going to be choppier here intraday. The euro pound, this is something we've been following since it topped here. Let's kind of make that a little bit bigger. So we've got, looks a lot like that DIA did, right? Kind of a little 2T, inter avalanche, 1, 2, 3, bouncing, 2 waves down. Now the daily chart looks quite a bit like where we are on the intraday charts of the overall market. So we're at that widening up zone here. Let me put that up for comparison so you guys can see that. These things just repeat over and over and over again, you guys. It's just amazing. So that's what we're looking at right now. So you can see, given how this kind of widened up and chopped around, that's what I'm expecting to happen here on the overall market as well at this point. And you can already see that it is starting to do that. Overall momentum still really strong on the downside, so there's definitely room to get, slightly lower lows or just kind of go out sideways into a choppier range. But it's going to be a trickier market than it has been throughout the entire rest of the morning. This point, kind of going, looks like it wants to try to break down again here. Euro yen, daily is breaking down with the euro. Here's the momentum reversal. And then we've got kind of a 1, 2, 3. This is probably going to chop around here too now, widen up at this point as well. Pound dollar and pound yen are kind of trading together. We've got that 2-way move up we were looking at back in February with the resistance to a correction. And now it's just kind of chopping around, and there's not really a whole lot going on the bigger scale at this point. Intraday, it's trying to do that tilted Phoenix for a little bit more continuation, but the weekly and everything is messier again here. So I don't really see anything I would do with these at this point. You can see the pattern a little bit better on the pound yen with the avalanche. And kind of going to 1, 2, 3, and then widening up. You're at a widening up zone here. Bonds, we are just hitting the measured move on bonds on our breakout on here. Grab this chart here. So momentum's a little bit stronger, but what we're looking at is this break. So this is, again, a widening up zone here on the bonds coming out of this breakout. So it's a really good level of resistance to watch for. And we should start to get things kind of chopping around a little bit more here. This can go for another 2 waves up and then off for another reversal. So basically, we're going to be looking at focusing on 2 waves now on this one back and forth here. Question. How do we get the momentum reversal template? You can do a screenshot if you want. I'll put it back up there. And if you can't grab it right now, you can grab it in the replay. So tonight you'll be able to watch the replay by just going to tonihansen.com/Friday. And that will give you the replay for today's session. I also go into this in a great deal of detail in my boot camps. Let me post the market timing boot camp. That's the one that you guys want to learn this stuff in even more detail. That's the one you should start with. And it's just tonihansen.com/time for that will give you the discounted one on it. Let me post that. And it is 6 weeks. And I'm actually going to be doing a live Q&A follow-up session for that on, let's see, let me grab the date on my calendar. So everyone that's taken the market timing bootcamp over the past year, I will be doing a special session on Saturday the 6th in the morning. So we will be meeting then. You guys will get an email on that here this week too. Go grab that bonds chart again. And I'm going to show you some of the other time frames here on this as well. So here's the 20,000 tick. So you can see again the move up, kind of the wider move. This is the 1, 2, 3. So you've got the 1, 2, 3 here at this point, and this is where things should widen up. We should start to get more back and forth action. So you can get like 2 waves down, 2 waves back up, 2 waves down, and it just kind of depends on how that momentum shifts here, determines what is going to follow at this point. But this is more of the back and forth type of zone where you're not going to expect these bigger impulse moves to be able to easily continue at this point. It's very, very rare that you would see that happen here. So I'm going to pull up gold. I'll show you guys something that's going on here on gold. I'm just going to go up to a larger time frame. We'll start with the daily here. So what we've got going on in the daily is just a really big move coming off of this high. This hit our support a couple weeks ago, right at the congestion back in here in January. And now we're working on leg 2 coming up. So this is going to be a pretty good resistance zone. We're right around a 61.8% Fibonacci retracement at this point. So this is a good resistance zone. When we drop down and look at some of the smaller time frames, what you'll notice is that momentum is trying to shift here. And we have two main legs of upside coming off of the low. So this becomes a zone where, again, things become trickier. It's not as clear cut at this point. So we can easily see things happening, like it can go into a head and shoulders for a potential breakdown. That's certainly a possibility here at this point. What would be a little bit more rare would be if this tries to go and if it goes and does this, where it treats this like the upside move, goes into a shallow phoenix, and then gains momentum. So if it can't develop a faster move off of this high, this becomes that next possibility. This is more rare that this would happen, but that is the next possibility depending upon how the momentum shifts as it comes off of this high. So the head and shoulders is going to be the most common, but it has the possibility that it can go and do this as well. That would happen if it has basically a slower move. I'm just posting this into my alerts room too for you guys that are in League of Traders so that you can go back and grab the images quicker. So you can review Forward Focus at www.tonyhansen.com/Friday in just a couple of hours. Let me grab that link and post it into the chat room for you there. There you go. Diamonds are going sideways. Is there another decision point? Has momentum shifted? As far as like the live action goes on diamonds here, what we are seeing is not really anything indicative of a bigger time frame setup at this point. Let me go actually to, let's see, I'm going to go to the 15-minute here. What I want you to see on the 15-minute is that momentum is so strong on this downside move compared to previous action on the downside that it is a lot easier for things to try to do lower lows and open up and just kind of widen up, but still pushing lower. It doesn't necessarily have to go to a lower low. It can go sideways, just like we saw earlier. But here's the example, a little bit of a smaller example of how it can go to slightly lower low and kind of shift at that point. Momentum's a bit stronger this time around, so it is a lot harder for this to get off of the ground now at this point than it was previously. We also have a bigger time frame shift as well. So if we look at, for example, here is the 2-hour chart. So you can see there's this bigger shift that's going on the diamonds. So we are in basically wave 2 down, but this can even go into 1, 2, 3 at that point and even have a bigger move, similar to like what you get going on over here. So that's even a possibility on a larger time frame. So this can chop around here, but then still go down into here and bounce around. So basically, the bullish side of things, you want to be super cautious right now because this has the bigger potential that we can continue to see bigger corrections off of the lows, or sorry, off of the highs here. Let's go take a look at our platinum. This has been a really strong mover in recent weeks. Really nice one for trading. I'm going to go actually show you guys the daily here first. We are at a key zone on platinum again. So our first short was a few weeks ago off the high here. Then we had the continuation into support. We are now at a measured two-wave move on the upside. So this is a really good resistance zone again here on platinum. I'm going to show you this on the intraday chart so you can see this a little bit clearer. So you've got your, basically your 2B coming off of the low here. Here's your Phoenix. And then here we've got a little bit of the momentum shift. So we're coming off of this high here. So this is what we're seeing here on platinum right now. And there's room for this to keep pulling back here at this point. So it definitely has a lot more downside potential as we go into the next week. Right now is a point you basically want to focus on waves of 2. So we're starting kind of, you've got a smaller wave of 2 down, but this can go and develop into a bigger wave of 2. So it can even go into like a head and shoulders at this point. There's not really anything I'm seeing quite yet for an additional setup. We would want to see something kind of base out a little bit to give us that second wave down. Basically, it'll look a lot like what we saw on the futures market coming off of the highs where, let me go pull that up here quick. Oh, see, we're getting this creeping down here. So you're looking at like here. This is kind of like what we're looking at for a platinum zone where it can do that secondary base for the continuation. So what that would look like on this one is, you know, some sort of base, something in here that would then go and offer the next short. Now, the larger time frame is not as great as what we saw on the overall market for downside because it's in the zone of congestion. So we don't have like a bigger time frame thing kind of going on here yet. I want to go look at the weekly, actually, see what we got on the weekly. Oh, you know what? The weekly actually does have that room. I remember this now. We looked at this the other day. So this actually does have that room that can go even further and break down coming off of this on the platinum. I don't usually trade platinum other than just short term. Not usually position trading it, but position trade zone does have the zone for at least another wave down that would be basically that measured move. That would be the next main level of support on that. So our platinum, basically we've got just the 2-wave correction here on the weekly. And so that is what can bring this lower again. Let's see, what else shall we look at here quick? Our wheat, we've got the avalanche, 1, 2, 3 down. This is a widening up zone on wheat. So you're starting to get that back and forth action. That's probably going to continue. So you're kind of even got room for a little bit more upside here on wheat and then back downside. You guys have any individual charts you want me to look at? Oh, oil. We didn't look at oil. Let's look at that one. So oil is the wipeout type of zone because you've got your initial move up and then we've just been shifting momentum. So we're just looking at the upper end of this channel as the next resistance level, basically your measured move right here. So this is the do or die point on oil, very similar to what we saw on the shifted momentum for the downside here today. So you got your initial move up. This is your first test, second test, third test, shift here, but not really the deep V's. So as far as short side goes, there's greater risk that it might not fully develop into a bigger turnaround. It can still go out and have the potential to do a second wave up. So really watch the smaller time frames on oil right now. It's going to be that trickier zone. And yeah, we covered some of those you guys are asking about, but I can go over them again. Hold on. So let's see, you want to look at, well, the pound yen we are just looking at here. So the pound yen, we're right at that second wave up, and then things are kind of widening up here. So there's not much I'm looking at this point except, intraday, this is a widening up type of zone. You've got your avalanche, your 1, 2, 3, and then things are kind of opening up here. 30-minute chart looks like we've got a little bit more downside. Weekly time frame is a little bit iffy. You've got your 1, 2, 3, your plus. So this is main resistance here on the weekly, but because of how this is forming, this can more easily go out sideways on the weekly time frame, not necessarily drop and continue. There is that risk that it can drop and continue, just like what we saw on the overall market here today, because this doesn't have a full V bounce. It kind of has that slower start. So it has the V's to begin with, but this last little section in here should have been a bit stronger to fully be able to turn around and go here and break like that. So this is a trickier zone. It can more easily turn and head lower. You got to watch that momentum on how this tries to play out here. I'm going to go pull up the monthly on this. Let's see here. So that's the weekly. So it definitely has that, potential to increase that breakdown, just like what happened in the overall market here today. And monthly doesn't have any better bias. It can do that as well. So what that would look like is that here's the initial shift. You'd kind of shift that out like that, and then it would try to bring in momentum like that on the downside. So you've got your 1, 2, 3, but this is only one wave down. So it's not a great place for a momentum reversal to happen. Here's the momentum reversal plus. Here's the main first resistance on the momentum reversal, and that's what we're dealing with right now. So just use the smaller time frames at this point because the bigger time frame can do the second wave, or it can try to hold out and do a phoenix, but that would only happen if it can manage to chop along and continue to chop along here on the weekly time frame. And it would have to do that for quite a while. So if that was going to happen, let me clear this. I'm going to go back to the weekly chart for you and show you the time development we would need for that. Basically, it would have to go and try to treat this like an inverse head and shoulders. That's the only way that could turn around easily and offer that up. And right now it's not looking like that. It can still go and do this. So how this momentum plays out here is going to be the key, and it can do either direction based upon where it's taking place in the larger trend. And then Euro Yen. So what we were looking at on the Euro Yen is, here's the momentum reversal. It's avalanche, 1, 2, 3 zone. This is a widening up zone here. So we should get more of the back and forth. Larger weekly time frame is still more bearish on this. Probably not as strong momentum here. So what can happen is this can pull down. It can kind of shift. Overall go a little bit slower on the downside. So even though we've got 2 waves down here, it's the first wave that breaks the channel. So there's still room for more downside on a larger scale here. It's just short term, we're a little bit exhausted just because of that momentum here on the 240. So it's a good zone to get things to kind of chop up a little bit more. This, you'll notice, actually looks a lot like platinum did. The 30-minute chart looks a lot like platinum. When platinum broke down, it had the initial breakdown, and then it kind of chopped, pulled a little bit lower with the slowing momentum. Right here. So here's kind of the chopping up on platinum. Now platinum was able to totally reverse, but it doesn't have quite the same pattern that you've got on the larger time frames as we have on the Euro Yen, but that's the same type of zone that you're at right here. So this can go, for example, do a little shift here, do a little bit of a 2B, kind of a short-term little bounce, even bounce up a little bit more on the intraday charts, but then have potential to weaken again. So shorter term, it's a good zone to get little bounces. Larger time frames, I wouldn't expect quite as much though. All right, gang, you are very welcome. I will get this saved here and get this posted up to the website so you guys can go back and review it. And I will be inviting you all to a class next week. I'll be doing a webinar next week on momentum. Basically, it will be the class that I taught in New York, a little bit of an updated version showing you guys some of the trades that we've had over the last week or so and how momentum has impacted it, which is what you can see exactly as we saw happening here today with even the smaller term momentum impacting the larger term outlook on things. So those classes will be on Tuesday. Well, we got one on Tuesday next week, and I'll get you guys information on the times as well. So just check your email for those, and you'll get those emails over the weekend. And if you do not see an email, then it means you must not be on my email list, and you will need to email help@tonihansen.com to make sure Sarah gets you put back on the list so that you can get those invitations for those webinars. And that's just help@tonihansen.com. And my awesome support lady is named Sarah, and she's wonderful. So she will help you get anything that you need. Her hours, Monday through Friday, basically 9 to 5. So you can contact her anytime during that time or get a reply anytime during that time from her. All right, everyone, have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all back next week.